Alex Murdaugh had almost everything: money, a respected career, a powerful family name, and generations of influence in the South Carolina's legal system. Then on June 7, 2021, Alex called 911 and he said he had just discovered something horrific. His wife, Maggie Murdaugh, and his 22-year-old son, Paul Murdaugh, had been shot and killed near the dog kennels on a family Mosell's property. Alex told investigators he wasn't there when it happened. There was just one problem. Paul's phone told a different story. And years later, this case somehow became even crazier because Alex was convicted of murdering his wife and son, sentenced to life in prison, and then those murder convictions were overturned. So today we're going back through Alex Murdaugh's case. What happened to Maggie and Paul? Why did prosecutors believe Alex killed his own family? And how did misconduct involving someone in a courthouse ultimately help destroy one of the biggest murder convictions in America? Because this case isn't over. Before we get into the murders, you have to understand exactly who the Murdaugh family was. This wasn't just some random family living in South Carolina. For generations, the Murdaugh name carries significant influence in the low country legal community. Alex himself became a personal injury attorney. From the outside, this looked like a successful family with money, property, and connections. But behind that image, Alex had been hiding something enormous. And eventually, the secret life started collapsing around him. And that's where this story starts to get darker, because by 2021, the Murdaugh family just wasn't dealing with private problems. There was already intense scrutiny surrounding them. 2 years before Paul was murdered, another tragedy put the Murdaugh family under a microscope. In February 2019, Paul was among 6 young people aboard a boat that crashed. 19-year-old Mallory Beach was killed. Paul was later charged in connection with the crash and pleaded not guilty. 2021, the case had not gone to trial before Paul himself was killed in 2021. The boat crash also created legal pressure surrounding the Murdaugh family, and that's important because prosecutors would later argue that Alex's life was beginning to unravel on multiple fronts. The boat case was only one problem because Alex had another secret that was potentially far more destructive. Alex wasn't simply experiencing financial problems. Federal prosecutors eventually described multiple money schemes in which Alex would divert money from personal injury clients. And remember, this man was an attorney. These were people that came to him expecting him to protect their interests. Instead, Alex eventually admitted that he'd been stealing from clients for years. This distinction matters. Alex's financial crimes are proven through his guilty pleas. The murder allegations are different. The prosecution used the financial pressure as part of its theory for why Alex might have wanted to create a crisis that would temporarily shift attention away from his collapsing financial schemes. Whether that theory completely explains murder in your own family is something you should decide for yourself as we go through the evidence. Now we get to the night that changed everything. June 7, 2021. Alex, Maggie, and Paul were at Moselle. Later that night, Alex called 911. Maggie and Paul had been shot near the family's dog kennels. Alex initially maintained that he had not been at the kennels with them shortly before their deaths. According to his account, he had been at the house before leaving to visit his mother. He returned and discovered the bodies. At first glance, that creates a potential alibi, except investigators eventually discovered something Alex apparently didn't know existed: a video recorded by Paul. This may be the single most important piece of evidence and the entire case. At approximately 8:44 that evening, Paul recorded a video at the Kennels. He wasn't trying to document a murder, he was recording a dog. But listen closely to the background, because witnesses identified the voices of Paul, Maggie, and Alex. That placed Alex at the kennel shortly before prosecutors said Maggie and Paul were killed, the exact place Alex had previously denied being. Think about it. If that video never existed, Paul unknowingly recorded evidence. This case potentially looks very different, that contradicted his father's account on where he had been. Eventually, Alex couldn't continue denying it because during his murder trial, he admitted he lied. Alex Murdaugh did something incredibly risky. He testified in his own defense, and on the stand, he admitted that his previous story about the Kennels wasn't true. Alex acknowledged that he had been there. He blamed his earlier lie on a persona associated with his drug addiction, but he continued denying that he killed Maggie and Paul. Now put yourself in the jury's position. You're deciding whether this man murdered two members of his own family, and he's admitting that he lied to investigators about his whereabouts immediately before the killings. And this is where I believe we have two separate questions. Did Alex lie? Absolutely. He admitted that. But did prosecutors prove he committed the murders? That's the question the jury had to answer. Prosecutors built their case largely through circumstantial and digital evidence. There was the Kennel video, cell phone evidence, vehicle data, Alex's changing story, his financial crimes, and the timeline surrounding the deaths. The prosecutors argued that Alex's financial world was collapsing and that murderers created a distraction from mounting scrutiny. But there was something unusual about this murder case. The prosecution did not have a straightforward piece of evidence like a video showing Alex committing the killings. So the jury had to look at the entire collection of evidence and decide whether all those pieces pointed to one conclusion. If you were sitting on the jury, is this enough to convict someone for murdering their wife and son? On March 2nd, 2023, the jury returned its verdict. Alex Murdaugh was found guilty of murdering Maggie and Paul and of 2 weapon offenses. The following day, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. For many people watching the case, that was the ending. Alex lied. The Kennel video exposed him. The jury convicted him. Case closed. Except it wasn't, because something had been happening behind the scenes involving a person whose job was supposed to help administer the court itself, and eventually it would blow the verdict apart. Rebecca Becky Hill was a Collection County clerk of court during the Alex Murdaugh's murder trial. After the trial, allegations emerged that Hill had improperly communicated with jurors. Alex's attorney argued that her conduct influenced the jury. Initially, Murdaugh's attempt to obtain a new trial failed, but the fight continued. Then the case reached the South Carolina Supreme Court, and in 2026, everything changed. In May 2026, the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled that Alex Murdaugh must receive a new murder trial. But understand exactly what that means. The Supreme Court did not declare Alex Murdaugh innocent. It did not determine that someone else murdered Maggie and Paul. It did not simply throw out the case because the evidence against him disappeared. The court concluded that improper external influence from the court of clerk deprived Alex of his constitutional right to a fair trial before an impartial jury. And that's an important distinction. You can believe Alex is guilty and still believe the justice system has to give him a fair trial. These two positions don't contradict each other. The craziest part is that Alex didn't beat the evidence. The integrity of the trial became the issue, and how the state had to prosecute the murder case again. Here's another important detail. Even with the murder convictions overturned, Alex Murdaugh isn't simply just walking out of prison. Separate from the murder case, Alex has pleaded guilty to extensive financial crimes. He received a 27-year state sentence for financial crimes, and he was also sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for federal financial crimes. So this retrial matters for determining legal responsibility for Paul and Maggie's deaths. But Alex has major prison sentences that's separate from the murders. And that brings us back to the question at the center of this entire story. What happened at those kennels? We know Alex was there shortly before Maggie and Paul died. We know he initially lied about being there. We know he later admitted that lie. We know a jury convicted him. And we know that conviction was overturned because South Carolina's highest court determined the jury had been improperly influenced. But overturning a conviction isn't the same thing as proving innocence. That's why this next trial matters. The state has to make its case again. The defense gets another opportunity to challenge it, and another jury may ultimately have to answer the question that has followed his family since June 7, 2021. Did Alex Murdaugh murder Maggie and Paul? This is where I want to hear from y'all. Forget the documentaries, forget what social media says. Look strictly at the evidence. The Kennel video, the timeline, the lies, the financial pressure, the digital evidence, and then look at the problems with the original trial. If you're sitting on that next jury, are you convinced beyond reasonable doubt that Alex Murdaugh killed his wife and son? Or do you still believe that there's reasonable doubt? Because regardless of what any of us personally believe, Alex Murdaugh is entitled to the same thing that every defendant is entitled to, a fair trial. And this time, everybody is going to be watching. And if you want me to cover the retrial and break down the evidence as it comes out, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments section, guilty, not guilty, or still not enough evidence. See y'all on the next one. Peace.